Hey everyone, and welcome to the season finale of IoT All the Things. I'm Rudy.
And I'm Wale. And in this season finale, we're going to have Traeger Grills join us to dive into IoT, analytics, serverless, data lakes. It is time to kick off the summer with a season finale of IoT, All the Things. Rudy, this is our season finale, so I couldn't think of a better way of just like sending ourselves off into the sunny sunset with having Traeger grills on. I think it's going to be incredibly cool and exciting story.
It's like I'm hungry for IoT and I'm hungry for grilled meat.
I'm a vegan, but I can work with this. Vegan burgers are delicious. So, with that in mind, we should definitely bring in our awesome guest, Dan Woodward from Traeger. So, Dan, how's it going?
It's going well. Thank you guys so much for having me on the show.
Oh, we're excited, Dan. I think it's like so cool just to be able to just talk about all the great stuff you're doing. And I think your story is pretty fascinating because, you know, there's a lot of things with Traeger grills in terms of background, but you move super quickly, like in terms of what you're doing with IoT. So love to hear a little bit more about you and then all the things that you're thinking about with Traeger grills and a little bit about the company.
Yeah, so Dan Woodward, cloud architect for Traeger pellet grills. I've got a deep background in data and using services within AWS. As far as Traeger goes, Traeger was founded about 40 years ago and has had a long history of delivering great products to its consumers. The focus has been disrupting this industry with a premium product that enhances the experience and allows anyone to make great food. We have a variety of different products, including grills, which are our main focus. We've got wood pellets, food rubs, we offer cooking classes, and just a ton of various accessories to use with your Traeger grill. We want the experience of cooking to be very simple. So how a Traeger grill works, to the left of the grill, we have something called a hopper. And you fill the hopper with wood pellets, and this is what fuels the Traeger grill. You can then select the temperature of your grill and place your food on the grill, and that's it. You fill the hopper, you put your food in, select your temperature, like bada bing, you're done.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool too because I was joking. I mean, I am a vegan, but like we grill out all the time, right? Like you can make some awesome food, and it's like I think the cool thing with your product too is that your users get all this control, right? Like you talk about like you can monitor temperature, you can get all this information off of sensors. So it's really, you know, this science and art kind of coming together with food.
Oh, for sure. It's an exciting company to be working for right now. There's some cool things happening.
Cool. And then the interesting thing is we think about the technology is you're able to bring the grills into the connected space. So what are the kind of things you're doing with IoT and how did you kind of get started on your IoT journey?
We like to take a customer experience focus on IoT. It's something that's super important to Traeger. We want each touch point with our customers to be in line with the Traeger brand. So this includes listening to our customers about what they like about the experience using Traeger products and what we can do better ultimately. A good example of this is within the Traeger app. We have a whole set of recipes, vegan and vegetarian recipes as well. You can choose your dietary preferences within the app. Another cool thing is you have a whole bunch of control over your grill from your phone. So if you're doing a long cook, say cooking a brisket all day, and you have the option, you basically have the option to monitor your grill's internal temperature from the Traeger app, and an external probe that you can put into your food to monitor your food's temperature as well within the Traeger app. Now, if you say you forgot something for dinner, you can go to the store and check on your cook while you're going and grabbing stuff out out in public.
No,
that's
way.
true multitasking.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, I'd love to. I know like you work with some really cool partners at AWS, like OST. So how did kind of working with a partner, and then we talked a little bit about serverless technologies, which is all things like Lambda, API gateway. How did the partners and serverless help you kind of migrate your application to AWS?
Yeah, so a little bit of background. Our road to AWS is a little bit different than most organizations. Our first implementation of IoT was with a company that at some point was bought and given a sunset date to shut off. So, which meant we needed a new
Pressure was
IoT
on.
broker. The pressure was on. So what this meant was we needed a new IoT broker, and to be exact, we had about 3 months to do this. This is not a small task. We're talking about seamlessly moving all of our grills over to a new platform without any downtime. The experience of using the Traeger app needs to be rewired to this new system. Bits and pieces of our website needed to be rewritten, and we needed to move into a new data lake, build a new data lake, a digital data lake. So at the time this was all happening, we didn't have any IoT technical resources at Traeger. So we needed to find experts in this area. And this is where OST comes in and partners with Traeger. And OST is one of 14 companies that are accredited by AWS to build out these IoT frameworks. And they've been really part of the success of what we've had at Traeger. It's funny, we would always have stuff going on with migration where we basically would think of something that had to happen with migration, and OST had already gotten it finished, and they finished the next like 10 things.
Oh, nice. So it seems like, interesting enough, like the partner was able to help you kind of accelerate. And then we talked about serverless as well as being one of those technologies that when you get used to it, especially when we think 3 months is super fast. So you've got to figure out how to, shrink the amount of infrastructure you need to manage and how you're going to build it. I would actually love to dive into, how you got to the road of your initial architecture, and then maybe even figure out how that migration ended up with where you ended at the end of your journey.
Yeah, so one of the things that we really liked about OST is they followed the same serverless architecture that we followed at Traeger with our data side. So just looking at this architecture document at the bottom, everything that we build within AWS is done through CloudFormation, and specifically through the serverless framework and YAML files. This gives us a competitive advantage because if anything, any of our infrastructure is missing, we can then go redeploy this with one script. We also use CloudWatch for logging. We use Systems Manager for hosting our keys and credentials within our platform. We use IAM for role credentials to the Traeger app, the management portal, a lot of these consumers that we'll be talking about. And our main identity provider for our website and our app is Amazon Cognito.
I see it's a very serverless-based architecture, but the one thing that I really like about this is the grill. I must say it. I have to say it, the grill. And just to let you know, I'm a very big fan of grilling, or as we call it in South Africa, braaiing. I even have a little sign here that says "No gaan ons braai," which is now we're gonna braai, or now we're gonna grill. So I just had to point that out, that for me, the thing that stands out in your architecture is the grill. But you've got other services. You've got, before I digress into that, you've got IoT Core, you've got Lambda, all these serverless technologies that you're using. Can you kind of talk about the scale of your architecture?
Yeah, so at the beginning of 2019, we had about 20,000 connected grills, and where we're sitting at right now is about 200,000. So this platform needs to support new connected grills coming online in the future as well, and projections of going to the millions. So serverless has really helped with this. What's super cool about serverless is we can request service increases on our say API gateway, Lambda, IoT core, whatever it may be, and usually within a day, AWS gets back with us, and our platform's scaled out within 24 hours, which is super cool.
Nice.
And I think what's really interesting, what I think about serverless too, Rudy, what I find interesting is, and I've just seen this with other companies, it's like you just have to do code, right? Like there's no infrastructure to manage. Like like the tough thing is you're sitting there and you're like, man, do I really want to go in and patch this server, or do I want to like write code? And so it seems like you're getting to do more of the things you enjoy doing, and then kind of letting the infrastructure really manage itself.
Yeah, serverless allows us to focus on writing code and writing applications, and we don't have to worry about what's going to run that code and what's going to run those applications. We can really focus on building out products.
Oh, that's fantastic. And grilling, yes, and grilling.
And grilling, yes.
But are there any large scale events that you guys have dealt with recently or in the past?
Whenever a big event is coming up, we want to make sure that our infrastructure is ready for that big event. So a most recent one was the Super Bowl back in February. This was the first kind of major test of our IoT platform. Everyone's cooking all day, and they're all cooking at the same time. So it really tests our platform. We particularly were interested in services like API Gateway, Lambda, and various things within IoT Core. When we talk about the amount of requests coming in per second, Thanksgiving are a big one. Everybody's cooking their Thanksgiving turkey. We've got Christmas, New Year's, Mother's Day, Father's Day, and the 4th of July.
All this data that's coming in, right? And is there a way that you're using maybe data lakes? Can you go into kind of the business analytics side of how you utilizing the data that you're collecting from all these systems?
Yeah, so I'm going to use the example of temperature change within the Traeger grill.
Sure.
So when you request temperature change within your Traeger grill, we post to a topic in IoT Core. And then really when it's in the topic, we can do anything with it, specifically firing a rule off. And we fire this rule off to send all of this data real time into what we're calling our digital data lake at Traeger. So looking at this architecture, super similar to our IoT platform. We've got CloudFormation, which we use to deploy all of our infrastructure. We use Amazon DB, DynamoDB, to track our data going through our data lake. We use CloudWatch for logging, and we recently just added this as Lambda layers are pretty new for specific libraries that we need in our data lake. We can put into a Lambda layer and pull into any of our Lambdas within our data lake.
Nice. I think what's really interesting about the data lake architecture is that, again, you're kind of carrying that serverless theme through again. So I see like in your system, you're able to do things like Athena. So like, Athena is serverless ability to query your data at scale with something that, we always talk about those concepts of like schema on read, schema on write. And you can do things with Athena where you can do your schema on read and then kind of figure out what queries you want to run later. So can you talk a little bit more about how you're using Athena and then how you kind of get the right data and even to Rudy's point, some of the scale you run into, especially on Super Bowl Sunday.
So we're collecting about 2 terabytes of raw JSON data coming off of our grills. And one of the biggest problems to solve in your data lake is how do you collect all of these IoT messages and combine them into files that make sense and partitions that make sense. So we use Firehose for batching all of our files. And we store all of our data in year, month, day, hour format. And JSON doesn't really pair well with Glue and Athena. You can get it to work, but there's better formats. So we used Lambda to convert this to Snappy Parquet. And what's cool about Snappy Parquet is you can run queries on Athena without uncompressing your data sitting out on S3. The data coming through, we combine it into these files, we convert it over to Snappy Parquet, and then we use 2 services within AWS Glue. The first one is the Glue crawler. What this does is it crawls your data sitting out in S3 and collects metadata around this data. So file size, how many rows that you have in your data, where it's stored, and it creates a record and a table within the Glue data catalog. And what this allows us to do is once we've crawled our data, we can now query it in Athena within seconds.
That's really cool. And I think if we bring up that architecture again, you brought up a couple points that I think, people just tend to run into when they think about their architectures. One is that all this data comes in a format that's different than you need to actually query it. So, IoT customers will say, I want to do binary. There was a question about doing Z-Wave, and normally you might be doing something like Seaboard. So like these compressed formats of data that aren't really in the right format for analytics. So using things like Kinesis Firehose and Glue crawlers, a literal crawler, you're able to then take those formats that are optimized at the edge and then put them optimized for analytics. So that's like a really, really cool kind of a approach. It's something we see pretty often with customers to figure out how to get the most out of, the data they get in the right format they need it in.
Exactly. And what's super cool about Athena is it's so cheap. It's $5 per terabyte of data scanned. And when you talk about compressing your data into Snappy Parquet, when we're talking about like 2 terabytes worth of data, you're talking like 97% compression, which is nothing. You're paying cents to crawl your data.
You hit on another thing that's pretty interesting as you start to scale is how do you kind of figure out how to optimize cost at scale? And we can post this in the Twitch chat, but we have this like well-architected guidance, and one of them is around cost optimization. So it's like, as you continue to send more and more data, how can you have the curve kind of do this with your costs as opposed to continue just to kind of go up? So it seems like as you thought about this architecture, figuring out ways to keep your costs kind of in line with, with the growth you're expecting.
Yeah, that's exactly what serverless allows us to do is we can process our data in real time. And if we ever need to reprocess our data, we can use Lambda to pick it all back up and redrop it like within a matter of minutes, which is super cool.
Is there something that is there a way that you kind of improving it? What's next for Traeger grills? What's version 2, let's say?
Yeah, so not all of the capabilities that we want are within this version of the data lake. For instance, we can't access real-time data and say like a caching layer. So we're exploring options around doing real-time graphing within a caching layer. And there's some off use cases where, say our support team needs to look at somebody's grill's data, we can push that to something like Aurora and have them read off of Aurora in real time so that they can help our customers real time.
So you're improving essentially the data access mechanisms and making it so that people can respond in real time versus getting, I suppose, stuck in the weeds, which is great. I mean, you want to improve your customer's experience. And like you said, they're measuring everything from the temperature to amount of pellets or whatever else attributes that you're capturing. I think it's just fantastic where you're going with it. So it's great to hear that this is the next version of it. And are you actually going to implement any other kinds of serverless technologies, maybe containers, Fargate?
We are. So some of our Lambdas that take longer, specifically around our integrations, we'd like to move to Fargate, and we've been exploring with EKS as well. So we'll see what happens there. For now, we'll just keep the serverless architecture, but we are exploring those containers as well.
Dan, I think this has been super, super cool just to get to dive in with you, especially with all the stuff you're doing at Traeger Grills. So I think it's like, as you kind of go forward, I need to go talk to my wife about grilling Saturdays. But this is awesome. And just the technology's cool and everything you're doing with it is just fantastic.
Hey, thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate it.